By the time you launch a new strategy, finally, most leadership teams have been talking about it for a long time. They're itching to move on from high-stakes wordsmithing so they can get back to work. We've agreed the priorities, assigned leads, and set targets. Let's just get on with it. But highly motivated executives tend to miss one important step between the blue sky thinking and the rubber hitting the road: defining which implementation framework to use for each element of the strategy. Most strategies seek to shape activity in two distinct ways: doing things that are entirely new, or maybe doing things in an entirely new way, or doing things we already do, only slightly better. That suggests two different types of work with two different accountability frameworks. Work that fundamentally changes what you do and how you do it doesn't fit as neatly into business-as-usual frameworks. It reshapes structures, governance, and operations rather than sitting within them. This kind of work belongs in a tightly managed portfolio of strategic change projects with its own cadence and governance, built around collective drive and decision-making. Individual time-limited projects should have their own sponsors, but accountability for the program of work to deliver on your strategic ambition is shared, not delegated. Gearing up for implementation means standing up that portfolio and the systems and routines to track and support it. Work that incrementally strengthens what you already do, by contrast, fits very neatly into business-as-usual frameworks. Responsibilities map well to line management, and goals that sharpen, redirect, or uplift performance often lend themselves to tracking through KPIs as much as milestones. Gearing up for implementation means embedding strategic language and objectives into existing frameworks and aligning individual and collective goals, incentives, and accountabilities across people, teams, and divisions. Being clear up front about how implementation effort splits across those two categories helps to avoid two uncomfortable mistakes. The first treats the strategy as if implementation should swallow everything. The other treats the strategy as if nothing much will really change. When the strategy swallows everything, we try to reconfigure the whole operating model and logic of the organization around strategic priorities. You stand up working groups for every priority action, contort back-of-house functions into poorly fitting strategic narratives, and try to run steady-state operations through the lens of strategic change. Genuinely strategic change work gets lost in all the noise, and leaders run out of bandwidth long before the organization achieves its goals. Instead of making waves in a good way, we end up trying to boil the ocean. We can also make the opposite mistake by treating the strategy as if it changes almost nothing. Strategic priorities get broken up and pushed down through line management, and we trust the system to handle big changes with the same tools we use for routine operations. This looks disciplined, especially if we think of implementation as a technical rather than leadership challenge, but chasing strategic goals solely through operational management frameworks rarely changes much about what people do on a Tuesday afternoon. It's wallpaper that we barely notice as we all keep doing more or less what we did before. Implementing your strategy usually isn't just major change or just business as usual, it's both. If you put them in the same frame, then operational demands of business as usual will always win. Operational demands are loud, they have deadlines, crises, and media attention, but slow progress on a long-term priority almost never feels like an urgent problem. Strategic change is quieter and the payoff is further away, so if everything's on the same to-do list, operational issues will crowd out strategic priorities every time, one Tuesday afternoon at a time. So, give those two different kinds of work separate homes with governance and accountability frameworks that suit their different characteristics. Drive your strategic portfolio of change projects to its own rhythm with dedicated time on the executive agenda for collective oversight and collaboration. Keep the portfolio tight and demand early warnings of minor slippage so you can sustain focus on your most important priorities. Assign sponsors to lead specific plays, but lead the portfolio as a team. Use your existing business-as-usual accountability mechanisms to strengthen performance where it matters most. Empower leaders to lead within their domains and hold them accountable for results. Sharpen targets and monitoring, embed strategic intent into performance conversations, and let operational managers manage the work. Then, periodically bring the two frameworks back together for the senior leadership team to reflect on progress, share insights, and adjust course using both sets of levers. The strategic change portfolio gets the attention it needs because it can't compete in the same frame as business as usual, and operational planning and delivery gets its own space because we already have robust systems for improving steady-state performance. Sorting implementation of strategic directions into the right frameworks can be the difference between a strategy that ends up as wallpaper and strategy that ends up as a treasure map.